It is time for our next speaker. Our next speaker loves photography, TV binging and toy poodles, but loathes drivers who don't wave if you let them into a lane, overripe strawberries and late-stage capitalism. Fun fact, once, as a kid, his father threw him up in the air, but, not being very sporty, failed to catch him. So he landed on his head, explains a lot. Please welcome to the stage a good old mate, Simon Bronson.
Enough of that. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody. So many friends in the audience today. I'm a bit nervous. It's not usually my thing. I'm locked away on the computer all the time. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Sorry, just got to load this up. Sorry. One tick. No. So, being a freelance, it was initially used to refer to medieval mercenaries, and that's sort of what I refer to us now, but except in the digital realm. Let's show my show reel. Thank you. If you want to leave to lunch early, maybe you could just have a look at this QR code and you can go to my website and there's some of my talk on there, so you can just skip ahead if you like. So basically I'm very old, excuse that, and it's just basically going to be an old man rambling, so apologies. A brief history lesson. I was a nerd kid. Well, I'm still a nerd. Camera assistant, sound recorder, editor, and I didn't really get into motion till very late in the game. I was 30 at the time, and at one stage I pretended that I lived in New South Wales in order to get this special mentorship, but don't tell the New South Wales government about that. Sometimes you have to break some rules. So here's kind of what we're going to talk about. There'll be some horror stories, some advice from producers I talked to, organisational tips, sanity tips, and personal projects. So a little bit of a background. I had a cushy job in an advertising agency as an editor and motion designer, but I got bored of that and wanted to make it in the big league, so I decided to move to London. So it wasn't the softest landing, I have to say. It took me a long time to get work. I had to pay 3 months. I had to pay 6 months rent up front, and it took me 3 months to find work. So it really helps to have some money in the back pocket if you want to make a big career change or move countries. And whereas I thought London would be super glamorous, I ended up doing a lot of bargain basement editing jobs. One of them included collecting a whole lot of firewire drives in a big IKEA bucket and then having to put the job back together. So that wasn't really fun. I think you need to be a bit of a realist in this industry. No respect to you Lisa, but I don't think we're necessarily artists. I feel like I'm a tradesperson with my box of tools who comes in and does a job. And I use my personal projects for my creative satisfaction. And once I did this, made that sort of mental shift, I became a lot happier with what I do. So while I was twiddling my thumbs trying to get work in London, I'd heard about this program, Trapcode Form, and it seemed like it was kind of such a nerdy kind of little toolkit that really sort of spoke to me. So I started to play around with that while I was waiting for work. I created this little piece, which I'll show, and I even got a staff pick on Vimeo, which is a great ego boost. And then even the creator, Peter Norby, reached out to me saying he's going to put on his gallery. And then I did a tutorial, and yeah, I'll show you that. This is 15 years ago. That a couple of people at an agency saw that and brought me into this amazing design agency in Mayfair in London, and they created really high-end brand packages. And funny enough, there was 2 other Australians there, and everyone had their very specialist field. There was like a print guy, and they brought over a typographer from Germany, and it was just an amazing creative environment. And we were just sort of creating these little pieces to sell in the ideas to the client. And it was fantastic because I got to stretch my sort of editing muscle and then putting music on something. And yeah, it was just great. And to think you can come in and being an all-rounder really helped, whereas there were so many specialist people in this agency. And the best bit was there was a lot of money around at the time. They took me over on their holiday in France, so I got to do some skiing, and even one night they drove us over to Italy and got to ride on a skidoo and have a restaurant at the top of a hill, and yeah, it was great sunny times. So after working in a studio, I have to conclude there are kind of 2 different types of people. There are like those people that get like super stressed on a job, and then there are those sort of chilled people you want to work with. And it's not always the most technically best people that you want in there. If you're hanging out with people all the time, we wanted to hang out with the designers who were just kind of laid back and people we wanted to be with. But there, you know, there's always a few horror stories along the way. At one stage, I was directing a car ad, and there was a guy from another department who was sort of a bit of a superstar, and he was such a superstar that he only did 1 shot and 1 work in progress, and everyone was too scared to ask him to do another one. So yeah, hopefully don't be like that guy. Disappearing, gone fishing, you can't contact them. This is a problem sometimes, especially if you're at the end of a chain on a job, if you're doing the comping or something, and you can't keep track of somebody or they don't let you know where they are. Another time I was working for a financial institution over COVID times, and the guy who had the responsibility of giving me the super sensitive data had a little bit of a meltdown and didn't contact us, and then at the last minute had to do everything manually and with a looming deadline. It's super scary. If you are, basically just stay contactable or let people know where you are. The worst thing is people going off the radar, and yeah, it's super stressful. And if there's like a personal crisis or something, or if you can't do something, it's better to be honest about it, and people generally understand, but just sort of ghosting off a job is a real no-no. Being that I am in my little bubble, I wanted to reach out to producers and clients to see, what they thought was. So I made a survey and I talked to some producers I know to kind of get a gauge of what they thought a good freelancer would be. Obviously, hard worker, good communicator, being reliable, efficient, highly skilled, attention to detail, level-headed, pleasant to deal with, and positive. Only some of these are actual technical things. It's a lot of this is just being soft-skilled, being honest and a hard worker. One quote from a producer was to be a pleasant realist, not afraid to be clear about what a job entails, but have a good attitude about it. To suggest ways that a piece of work can be better, but who can take it on the chin if the agency or the client is not on board with that. And at the end of the day, the honesty is the best policy. Don't try to bamboozle someone with excuses that something technically was wrong when it isn't, or, eventually you'll be found out. Say that you stuffed up and then try to fix it, essentially. Producers, it's a job that I really don't envy. There's so much stress on the producer side. You may see them shoveling lunch into while they're glued to their laptops, Slack open every minute of the day, and having to deal with clients who could be really, really demanding. I was talking to Sophie Taylor, who's going to talk later, and she pointed out that their work often starts when we knock off, especially if they're working across time zones. They might be working into the night. And also translating the information, the technical information to the client and what the client needs to get to us. And obviously, even if you have a problem with a producer or something, don't do what one artist I know overseas did, made a meme about them and then got caught out. And obviously, they didn't get work with them again. So anyway, you get a job. What I like to do is the ultimate Uno card, the reverse brief. You might have a phone call or a Zoom call, and you have to summarise this at the end of the day. So what do you first do? You've got to take or crush all of their hype and hopes and dreams. That's number one. Then reduce it down to a set of actionable stuff, clarify everything with rounds of feedback, what they'll see, when, and the priority list. What is the most important stuff? And obviously to be upfront about the time and the cost. I mean, if they only have $500, you can't remake Avatar. I use this really daggy program called OneNote. It's been around forever. It's in Windows, it's free. And what I'm doing now is essentially just copying everything out of my email client and then putting it in there. And then you can have quotes and all the different steps, PDFs and everything. It just keeps it out of your email. And I find that a bit of a time saver. For sending whips along, I'm using Digital Pigeon. They're a Melbourne company, and the best thing about sending a whip with Digital Pigeon is that you know when someone gets the whip at the end of the day. And sometimes you can gauge how well something did by knowing when they downloaded it and how long the feedback is. So if it's a few days after someone's downloading something, it's probably the bad news, actually. They've been kindly enough to offer a discount. So there's 25% off if you sign up. Anyway, you've got the job. Well done. Big or small, it doesn't matter. If you have a stupid, simple job that's beneath you, at least do it well. You need to typeset one stupid line of copy, do the best damn typesetting you can. Because if you do a good job and you didn't complain, they'll be remembered. And these stupid, small little jobs can often turn into big jobs if you aren't a dick about it. So, as far as workflow, you got to think macro and then micro. Start as loose as possible. Sketch, viewport renders, plate blasts, And for all you 3D folk over there, it's so tempting to dial right into your 3D render of choice, but don't touch that yet. You want to have as most flexibility really early on. I like this quote from Matthias Moll. He's got this book on AE scripts. It's free. He says, don't be scared to fail and don't try to avoid it. But in order to stay efficient, you want this to happen as early as possible. Time-wise, it was easy enough when I worked in a studio and I could run off for a cup of tea every 10 minutes or so, but now I'm locked away in my little studio and I need to be structured with my time. So I use this Pomodoro method, Pomodoro meaning tomato in Italian. It means you work for 25 minutes, a little timer goes off, and then you know that you need a little break. Even if you're like zoned in on a project, I find this really, really good because it gives you a mental break, getting away from the computer, and then, yeah, you can start fresh. I've got a little physical timer. It just really helps to know when I need a break. So it beeps and I know I have to go. So there's working at the computer and then there's thinking. And I believe that there's two separate things. Sure, I'm at the computer working, but when I'm away from the computer, it's often when I have my best ideas. And it's good to basically break that up throughout the day. You might want to go for a shower, unpack the dishwasher, put the washing on, come back to your work. And in those periods when you're not looking at the computer and just getting totally in the zone, that's when I do my best thinking. But for people who like dogs, I recommend getting a toy poodle. They're some of the best dogs out there, especially if you know your neighbour 2 doors down sneezes. You want to know about this essentially. But if you don't have a toy poodle, I've created this poodle walking simulator, which are free to use. But then again, sleep is often the best way. Like, how many times do we start a job and then you think about it overnight and then you can just ditch it all and then start again the next day? And obviously, turn off your notifications, as Elmo said. There's so much temptation to read feedback on your phone late at night. And in case I come back from the future, I want to know that I shouldn't check my phone on Saturday, the 9th of November, because then it really just sort of ruined my weekend because I was worried about the job. So this is just a note for me. Work in progress. We're employed to problem solve, and trying things is really good, but we don't want to just stay in a cave. We need to show our work in progress, and we're paid to do that. You don't want to hold off showing something at the end of the day, and it's something that we could have worked out earlier on. So more whips is better. And then when you make a whip, make sure to annotate what that whip is. Oh, I changed this or I changed that. And also for my students who really don't give me enough whips, just make it exist first and then you can make it good later. So there's the final product, which looks fantastic, but what is really happening on the back end? What does the other designer you've handed the project look like? And it often looks like a mess. Some of the best feedback I can ever really get is that another designer they've handed a project on is it's well organised, and that's just so satisfying that you've been able to make something which someone else can use effectively. So shout out to Justin McClure and Ben Marriott. We love you for creating lots of free tools out there to keep our projects organised. These are some templates for After Effects. And there's also R2.com, who's created a cool script to put all of your messy Cinema 4D files in very neat nulls, and it looks super tidy, and it's got to keep you very satisfied. Obviously, we need to really check our work. I create a little check boxes here, and that knows I can know when I check stuff off. But back in the old days when I was working at Method, there were 3 very helpful people who used to work in a room with no light. It was like a tiny little room, and they would check all of our work for us. And I really miss those guys, because now I have to do it myself, and it's so annoying. Karma. Other freelancers can be your best friends or worst enemies, and it's often hard to tell. Go out of your way to refer jobs to friends, and that'll come back to you in the end. I've reached out to so many people in this room, and it's been a complete sanity check. I'm living remote. I'm just on my own, and having people here at Node, at Melbourne Motion, and on various Slacks and stuff. I thank you all the people I've reached out who have helped me, not only for projects, but for my own sanity or to vent or something. And that's why Node is so special. I'd like to talk about some large-scale projects. I've had a few this year for overseas clients. While they're under NDA, there are a few kind of lessons I've learned. First of all, they are super stressful. You may be dealing with massive, massive canvases, and it can get pretty tricky. So whereas you would want to put the creative before the technical, I think sometimes with these jobs, you have to design within the technical boundaries. Like if you've got a $20,000 pixel wide comp, how are you going to do that? You're going to do a full simulation stuff. I appreciate Jack's amazing workflow, but sometimes you just jump into a job cold and you don't have that ability to create a whole pipeline. So the expectation, you want to be like super creative, but at the end of the day, you may be just waiting for your render. The advantage now is with Parsec, I could be using a computer in Sydney or LA, which is fantastic. It frees up my own computer and all the files can stay on their server and I don't have to worry about transferring. At the end of the day, sometimes the spreadsheet or the Google Doc is the most important thing to check stuff off. And then you really hope your priority is up there so you can get your renders done on time. But at the end of the day, sometimes you can feel like you're in the matrix working on these jobs. So with that in mind, I try to design and render with the resolution in mind so I know how long something's going to take. So I'll render out one frame and then work out what passes that I need, because I know that doing the compositing in After Effects is going to be a lot quicker than sending something back to the render farm. So some tips for the large outputs is to keep your 3D files really small. There's great compression out there, EXR, DWA or DWAB. If you're doing a massive canvas, you can do a monster After Effects file and then just split those up with output modules. It means there's one comp, it renders all at once. And as Jack was saying, proxies can really save your life, especially if you need to turn around a work in progress and there's an element you need all the time, use proxy files. So after all of this technical work and what have it, sometimes you do need to just go with the flow. Flow means different things to different people. It may be just going in the zone or just learning new tools or just following your interests. I've gone down so many different rabbit holes learning software that then was discontinued, but you learn something along the way. And then I spent a year getting right into AI, and then I realized I really hated it. So what are you going to do? You guys might have a folder like this on your hard drive. I certainly do. It really helps to kind of realize your projects and finish them. As George Washington said, truth will ultimately prevail when I complete these motion experiments. So with that form project, I was really lucky that Satya from Robite found me, and he said, "Oh, I've got this new plugin called Plexus. Do you want to have a play?" And I totally love using it. And he said, "Oh, we'll make a trailer." And then I just made a trailer, and then he invited me to come over to Las Vegas to present it at AE Scripts, and then I did that for a couple of years, and I've been testing his plugins ever since. The latest one being Stipple. It's a fantastic plugin which uses this technique called stippling. It's been used in art for centuries. It's basically all these little dots. His has a little spin on it, and that has sort of a dynamics engine built in. So here's some of the stuff I've been doing with that. At the end of the day, our hard drives are going to die, and it's a case of when and not if. And as a wise man, John Tanios said, because John needs another shout out, thanks John, it's always good to have a backup essentially. I've got a drive like this, and the advantage being if one dies, I can replace it. There's some redundancy there, and another opportunity I had when Google Drive wasn't working, I could remotely link my drive to someone else's. So yeah, it's good to think about drives. Taxation, I'm not an accountant, actually not really qualified to talk about it. I would say make sure you put your money aside that you've got to pay for tax so you don't get a big surprise. But at the end of the day, take it easy, money is fake. Society isn't natural and the sun is going to explode. Thank you for your time. It's been great talking to you.